I honestly think it's a very interesting topic. We're going to discuss today about governance and compliance in the global legal industry. And I'm very happy and personally pleased to introduce Kathleen, because I know her personally. We see each other in Belgium a lot of time in seminars and different updates, and we have also the opportunity to speak about this topic that I think is very interesting, also because I recently moved to another role. I used to be more a commercial counsel, and now I'm doing more compliance, HR, data privacy, and corporate matters. And I think it's very, very interesting seeing also from the experience of somebody like Kathleen, who work in different segment in different industries. She worked both in Belgium and the Netherlands. She had a very broad experience in different companies. Now working for a company with a very difficult name to pronounce. I tried several times, so apologies if I'm going to say it not in the correct way, but it's a SESVANDERHAVE. It's a company that is she will tell you more about that, but it's in the sugar beet seed industry, and it's a medium, depending on the reference, but we can consider a medium, small size company. But she has a lot of experience also in other industries. She's been with Illumina, she's been with life science companies. So I think it's going to be very interesting. We're going to try, hopefully, to make it more, let's say, a discussion and ask you also some question, because I think it's going to be important to see how compliance program, how compliance, generally speaking, can be seen in different industries and in different size of companies, because I think it's going to be pretty challenging to apply certain rules to small size companies. And I'm sure Kathleen will go through the presentation and make sure that all the different aspects are taken into consideration, and for sure her broad experience will support in better understanding the topic. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to Kathleen.
Thank you, Virginia. And we realize, although there are only two of us, we stand between you and lunch and the final picture of this forum. Indeed, since 3 years, I work for a company called SESVANDERHAVE, which you pronounce perfectly. Thank you. We missed the opportunity long before I started, about 10 years ago, when we actually merged two companies together, and we got a new ownership to change the name in something that would have been pronounceable on an international level, which would have helped us very much, because we're headquartered in Belgium. We have a factory in Belgium, but we export up to 95% of what we actually do. So 95% of what we do is international export. Very interesting, we also have two factories in different parts of the world. We have a factory in Ukraine and a factory in Russia. You can imagine the challenges that that brings with it. We export a lot to the Middle East. We export to countries such as Iran, Iraq, Syria, Egypt. So speaking about compliancy, there are some issues, but also speaking about trade compliancy. And that is one of the things I wanted. How do I do this?
Just with the arrow.
Oh, just with this one, yeah. That is what I'm planning to say. You see, when you speak about compliance, it's an entire package. It's trade compliance, it's antitrust and competition. Human rights come in a lot these days. I see it coming in more and more. You speak about the FCPA, the UK Bribery Act, the Privacy Corporate Governance, and even a lot more. And, compliancy started out being, I remember 10 years ago, compliancy was the FCPA. That was compliance. And I used to work for an American company at that time, and, FCPA, and now we had SOX, and then those two were, we had entire teams to do FCPA and SOX. we had teams bigger than the company I now work for to do FCPA and SOX. And we did trainings, and we went to all countries, and we did all kinds of things that in a small and medium-sized company, we are 700 people worldwide in this company, of which we have quite a bit blue collars. Not all of our collaborators are scientists or managers, although we have a lot of people in R&D, but we also have a lot of blue collars who actually are working on fields, who actually are on sugar beet fields, collecting the seed, doing the field trials. So, and they're all scattered all over the world. It's not because we have the 3 factories, Belgium, Ukraine, Russia, and we sell in the Middle East. We also sell in Japan. We do trials in New Zealand. I mean, there is, by way of speaking, just one country I can think of for the moment where we will never do business, and that is Argentina. Not for whatever reason, for the reason that in Argentina, sugar cane is subsidized, and you wouldn't be able to sell a sugar beet if you give it away for free, and even in the framework of what I'm speaking about, even give a car together with it. If you buy a sugar beet, we'll give you a BMW. Then you wouldn't get rid of it in Argentina. But for the rest, we try to sell our stuff, our products to as much countries as we can. So how do you start? When I came with the company 3 years ago, we had formally no compliance program. No. Although we did business in all these countries. But that was formally. Because I actually never had a company that is so much in line with compliancy as we are. Because we do these things, because we've always been somewhere limited to make sure that we were compliant with international rules. I mean, if we sell to a customer, and we know all our customers, and our customer database remains the same, because our customers are not the farmers, our customer is a sugar industry. And the sugar industry is a very conservative industry, but also an industry where the customers remain the same. I mean, we sell to British Sugar in the UK, we sell to one of the 3 sugar companies in France, we sell to sugar companies in the US. So, I mean, it's easy. We're never on sanction list, except for North Korea, and again, there we don't do any business. But we're never under the sanction list. Sugar beet is an agriculture product, and there is no sanction about exporting it. The problem is getting the money back in and working with your banks. That's the problem. We always been very aware without actually being aware of what's going on. But I didn't have to realize or make my management realize that this is a very big issue for us. This used not to be a big issue in the past because the SMEs were kind of out of the loop in the past. That's over. I mean, prosecutors, certainly in the US say, and we have business in the US as well, if you want to expand your business on an international level, if you want to go to high-risk markets, then you have to be prepared for these topics. You have to be prepared for governance, compliance, ethical topics. And it's very clear that they get more worldwide, prosecutors get more and more resources and means to prosecute you. And they are looking now to the SMEs as well, with an international, with a global, what they do globally. We're in the loop, I know, because the sugar industry, from a lot of compliance and a lot of regulatory issues, is in the loop. So we know that we are in the loop and we have to do it. But it was kind of easy for me, and I think it might be a lot more difficult for general counsel of small and medium-sized companies who are not as regulated as the seed business is. if you work in a less regulated industry, it's a lot more difficult to convince your management about compliancy and about ethics. Now also depending, of course, we have people we work with. We do research and development agreements. We have people we work with who are our customers, and then you have, you get contracts and you get contacts with all these multinationals. I mean, you can think about multinationals such as Nestlé, but you can think about the multinationals such as British Sugar. And they have all these nice policies, and they have standard contracts with standard clauses, and then you start looking at the contract and you call their counsel who is dealing with that contract, and you ask a question about some of the compliance clauses in a contract, and you say, why do you want to know this? Or you get this form that you have to be filled out, and you think, why are you actually asking us to answer this question? And I've done it. I've called legal counsel at multinationals, and I've had answer like, well, actually my manager insists on it. Seriously, my manager insists on a lot of things, but I still need to know why she would insist on things. So when you go to multinationals, some of them, and I say some of them, have a lot of window dressing. I don't say all of them have a lot of window dressing, but on compliance, there is a lot of window dressing in the world. What we do because we think we need it. And we're not perfect. We don't have a perfect compliance program. By far, we don't have a perfect compliance program. And sometimes I get faced with a question from our sales guys or finance people or whatever, and they say, I think we have a problem here. Can you have a look at it? And can you get me the solution how to deal with this? And then I don't even know. I think, I have no clue. I try to find the answer by looking it up. I still don't have no clue. I've even tried sometimes to call our bank, and they say, well, honestly, I don't know how to deal with this problem. We have no clue how to deal with this problem. Most of the time it's about trade sanctions. Then my normal go-to person is the person who is dealing with ICC in Belgium. ICC, by the way, is great to help you out with compliance and trying to get some information over there. No, this was still good. This was not. So what you start with when you start looking at building a compliance program in a company is you have to see what you have. What do we have for the moment? Which is normal business practice where I work, which is not yet formalized or is not yet put in a code, but what do we already do that is correct without even realizing that people who do it is correct. So that is what you need to do. What you also need to do is you need to know your business. You need to know what you need, because you probably will not need, the entire package as a multinational does. You have the freedom, because you're a smaller company, you have a freedom to make decisions, and you have a freedom to see what do we do. I mean, we do business on sugar beet seed in the Middle East. So trade sanctions for us, we're an agriculture product. As far as I know, the only agriculture product that has a trade sanction on in its name is castor seed oil. So sugar beet seed doesn't have it. So you need to know what you need. You need to know what you have. And then you have to figure out what is the level of knowledge in the management and in the company. So if you realize that the awareness by the management is already high when you start doing this, you're a lucky person. Because you could have a company that says, well, we're so small, we don't care. And what's going to happen to us? We're kind of flying under the radar, and nobody will ever notice that we're doing stuff that we're not supposed to do. I've worked for large companies. I worked for multinationals. I've worked for really large companies. I used to work for Tyco just after the entire debacle with Kozlowski happened. I joined Tyco. So at that point in time, I think, the most perfect company in the world, or at least trying to be the most perfect company in the world, because we just were faced with something that happened to us, the Kozlowski debacle. So there was a reason why we were the most perfect company in the world. So once you have this, you can try and build this program. Now, what you need to know as well, what you need to be aware of, is what are the damages in case of non-compliance. Because what are the damages in case of non-compliance is a very important motivation to convince your senior management that this is important. And it's very clear, I mean, the damages is monetary. You pay fines, I mean, you can even go to jail for some of these things. Compliance with competition law issues are huge fines, but also it will affect your customers. Your customers will not necessarily stay your customers if you are non-compliant, or your collaborators or your partners. And we already spoke about it in the previous in one of the previous sessions here. These days, it's about reputation. You don't want to be the front page of the Financial Times of your country. I mean, one of the worst things that could happen is being the front page of the Financial Times in your country. We don't want to be in the TED in Belgium saying that, SESVANDERHAVE is a company that is corrupt, or SESVANDERHAVE is a company that doesn't follow guidelines. We are very vulnerable because of the fact that we have, we're in the seed business. That means that we have a lot of chemicals on our site. We do research and development into GMOs, because we do work in other parts of the world than Europe, and only Europe is very sensitive about GMOs. Asia not at all, Africa not at all, and the US not up until now, but that might change, I fear. So we do know that we need to be very careful about that. And your reputation is although they say, your reputation, a good reputation comes by foot and goes by horse, I don't think that's true. I mean, I think that the reputation sticks. It's really good to have, it's an asset to have a good reputation, because something will happen along the line. We're a living company. We do make mistakes, and strange. It's a very. I was telling this during one of the breaks. We are building this just to give you an idea. We're building this huge state-of-the-art greenhouse in Belgium. Everything that you can imagine is in this greenhouse. All the new technology. Now it's not finalized yet, so we haven't opened it yet. But last weekend we had a company party in the same village as we're not based in a town or in a city. We're based in a village, in the same village as our company is, as where the greenhouse is built as well. And in the middle of the night, around 10 p.m., apparently all the lights went out on in this greenhouse. I mean, it was 10 in the evening, and apparently it felt like it was 2 in the afternoon on a sunny afternoon. And the neighbors were like complaining because they couldn't sleep. So our CFO, because I wasn't at the company party, I was at another party, and our CEO wasn't there either. So our CFO got a call saying that, what's going on in your new greenhouse? What is going on there? And, the company we bought the land from called as well, because we signed a very strict contract about environmental issues, that we wouldn't do this, we wouldn't do that, we wouldn't do that. And they called as well, and they said, what are you doing? You signed an agreement with us about, no light pollution. And now it's like 11 in the evening, and it feels like 2 in the afternoon. What's going on? So our CFO immediately drove there and handled the deal. Now, regional TV picked it up anyhow and came with images on Monday evening. They don't do news during the weekend. So on Monday evening, the headline of the regional TV was SESVANDERHAVE pollutes. The greenhouse is not even open yet, and there is already light pollution. Now, apparently we tested some of the systems that we had, and that went wrong, and we had this light pollution. We immediately did something about it. But, these things don't bother you that much if you have a good reputation. We have a good reputation in our neighborhood. We care about people, we care about the environment, and we explain a lot to the people in our neighborhood. What we're doing, why we're doing it. We need to do this because of the industry where we're in, of course. So I think reputation these days is very important and is worth more than everything else. So once you have all these things, what are you gonna do? You're gonna make standards and procedures, but you don't pick them from the internet. You just write them yourself. You make sure that you don't take templates. You might use a template to discuss or to decide upon how to phrase some things, but please don't use templates. Make them yourself, adapt them to your business. Because if you're a 700 employee seat house, you are not the 260,000 employees Tyco I used to work for. When I used to work for Tyco, we were still 260,000 people in the world. I now work for a company who is a 700 employee seat house, which is totally different. You have to have, and that is very important, companies have to have leadership and culture. I mean, if your senior management and your board of directors don't believe that compliancy in these days and age are important, then forget it. It will never happen. You have to make sure that you have reasonable efforts to make sure that individuals are compliant as well. Because even if we're like a very small group, 700 people is not a lot of people, but they are scattered all over the world. So we don't see them. I don't see them, all our employees, I don't see them every year. Some of them I never see. We have employees who have no clue who I am. They know Kathleen and they know that she's the general counsel of the company. I mean, probably most of them do. Some of them probably don't even do. And you have to start educating and training your people. I know out of experience, and I know this is something that multinationals like very much, it's web-based training. Because for web-based training, we don't have to travel. We don't have to lose time in a meeting room. We don't have to explain things to people. We just give them a web-based PowerPoint, and we tell them afterwards to fill in a quiz. And if they succeed, we'll tell them, yay, you're now compliant. Out of my experience, again, I've done that. I've seen people doing that at our office. They're not interested. I mean, you just have to put your money in it. You have to do it. If you want to have a compliance program, you have to have the resources and the efforts to do it. And, there are tons of possibilities in small companies to combine this with other things. I went to the commercial conference where all our commercial people are worldwide. The ones from China, the ones from Russia, the ones from Ukraine, the ones from all over the world are at this commercial conference. So for me, it's easy to go to that commercial conference, say, take an hour and a half, 2 hour slot of that commercial conference and do the training. And then you get this interaction because people will start interacting with you saying, this is very difficult for me because we live in another part of the world and this is not necessarily how we do business in this part of the world. And then you can get feedback and you can work with that. Now, training and education is very nice, but afterwards you have to monitor and audit it as well. And then you come to the choice between, are you going to take disciplinary measures for not complying, or are you going to reward your compliance rock stars? Now, I think at a certain point in time, if somebody is really persistent in not complying, in not following the guidelines, in not doing what they should do, then you have to take disciplinary matters. That means that you have to work with HR in each of the countries, because these disciplinary matters can have a different impact on their on the HR policy. So that is something you have to work with HR. But I'm all in favor of doing these compliance rock stars. You just make sure that you reward people for being compliant. And we're not an American company. We don't do oh yeah, you're the best employee of the month, or yeah, you're the best employee of this year. The only time we do this is for our commercial conference. There we hand out awards for the people who've done the best job. But we try to do this compared, we do this for the commercial conference, where we say, okay, this is our compliance rockstar for 2016. We don't do this for the finance people. They would say, oh, compliance rockstar, what's that? I mean, just let me do my job. So we depending on which department we are working in, depending on also the country where we're working in, or I have to deal with, we adjust that to what it is. My next part is I was saying that you have to look for partners to help you, because you can't deal with it on your own. I'm the general counsel. I have one direct report in Europe and one direct report in the US. So I'm responsible for a lot of things, not just for the legal part of the company, but for a lot of things. I'm responsible for licensing, I'm responsible for legal, I do compliance. So you need to find partners outside of the company, and you need to find partners inside of the company. If I'm responsible for compliance, that doesn't mean that I do compliance all the time. That means that I have people in all departments. In our logistic departments, people deal with trade compliance. I gave them training. They know they can always come to me. They know they can always call me, no matter what time it is. If we need to ship something to Syria, and there's going to be a problem, they know that they can call me and help them. Now, what I said, ICCC is a great resource for your compliance programs. Just make sure that you know these people in your country. Make sure that you actually speak to these people in your country, and be involved in it, in this thing. This is one of the examples that launched this week, and I was able to say it because it launched on the 7th of June, so about two days ago. It's a joint effort of ICCC Belgium and FEB, which is a federation of enterprises in Belgium. And it's actually something that everybody worldwide can use. It's a blog, and it's about trade controls. So about I need to ship something to Iran. How am I going to deal with this? It is made by lawyers, Belgian lawyers, European lawyers, and US lawyers. And it is in collaboration also with banks who do a lot of international trades. So you get really good information on there. Just I will give you the it's just www.worldtradecontrols.com. World Trade Controls in one word. It's a great blog. It's very new, but it's a great blog. And now for probably the most thing that's gonna cause some, I hope, some discussion in the room is, do we need a separate compliance function? And if we do need it, what would be her or his role? My opinion in small and medium-sized companies is no, we don't need a separate compliance function. There is no added value in having a separate compliance function. And also, like I said in the beginning, what is compliance? Is it going to be trade compliance? Is it going to be FCPA, UK Bribery Act, and all the other acts in all the other countries? Because we speak a lot of FCPA and UK Bribery Act, but all countries have legislation on corruption. And all countries have different legislation on corruption. So if you would have a separate compliance function, and most, multinationals say, well, we need the chief compliance officer.
And Kathleen, maybe let's pause for a second and let's ask a couple of questions to you guys. First question is, What do you think about this? Do you agree that what Kathleen said is, in her opinion, depending on the company, the size of the company, would be necessary or not? First of all, do you agree? Can I see by showing your hands who agrees with the statement that Kathleen just expressed? Do you agree that there should not be a separate compliance function in a, say, small, medium company? Or let's reverse the question. Who doesn't agree with that statement? Okay. Maybe can I ask you, let's start with you in the first, she raised the hand before, sorry, just to be fair. Can I ask you your opinion, if you can explain in your view?
Right. Well, I suppose it does depend how large your company is, but I think a company that has 700 is probably in a position to have a compliance officer. I was general counsel in a much larger group, so I come from a different environment, and I felt it was very important to have a separate compliance function. So I'm just basing it on my own experience. I think you obviously work very closely with the compliance person, but it may change. But in the group that I was involved with, I made myself responsible for the larger umbrella, but had separate people for different separate responsibilities. And I had somebody who was specially there for the compliance function.
Sorry, if I may ask, the person who was responsible for the compliance function, was it reporting to you, or was it reporting to the CEO, or?
He reported to the CEO, okay. So we were at the same level, but we worked very closely together.
Okay. Okay.
And what was actually, is it his or her, what was his role? Because what was it? Was it fraud compliance? Was it trade compliance? Was it we work in a very regulated, I work in a very regulated industry. Do you put that regulations together with the compliance function? How did you actually set the boundaries of what compliance is for a chief compliance officer?
Right, well I think your list of all the different problems that arise was the beginning of where compliance comes in, and certainly some regulatory issues were to be looked at by him as well. But I think it probably depends on your industry and what your industries are. So, as I said, we worked very closely together, but I was very glad to have a separate compliance officer.
Your turn. You raised your hand. Thank you. First.
Well, I was just going to make the point that it's not always an option. It actually is a requirement. There's various different regulations now, and for example, the GDPR that's going to be coming in is going to require you to have a data protection officer there. So it's a bit of a false choice. It is actually a requirement in many situations. In some areas.
The question is a separate. The question is a separate compliance officer. I'm the data protection officer. Even we have to have a data protection officer in Belgium. You can't go to the Belgium Data Privacy Commission and not have a data protection officer. In name and in responsibility, that is me, because I know how the regulation works. But in all the admin that comes along, that is something who actually belongs to the IT department. And they have a dotted line to me, to report to me as well on data protection, but in reality that is someone who actually reports to our IT manager. But my question is, do we need a separate compliance officer? And most, certainly multinationals will then ask for a chief compliance officer. And I always like to think, and we all do that. I mean, we done it, and legal does it, and marketing does it, and then you see the chief compliance. He wants or she wants a seat at the table, which I think is the most ridiculous thing you can do. I don't always want to sit at the table. I just want to be informed when something comes along that is my responsibility. But I don't want to sit at all these meetings where you don't get anything, where you're not any added value and you don't get information that you need. So before you know, you have a senior management team of like 25 people, which is, according to me, which is very inefficient. And I'm pretty sure that somebody who deals with compliance is going to ask for that seat at the table.
So maybe the question is really where we set the bar.
Yeah.
What's the minimum for a company according to your opinion and your view? And I think your view and your opinion may be very different depending on which industry you work for. I believe from what also I've experienced during our conversation, Kathleen was telling me how different was her experience in the different industry she'd work for. But I would be very interested to understand, according to your view, which is the bar that is the minimum of, let's say, employees that would say, for example, 500 people is the threshold after which I know I want to have a separate function. Again, we're not discussing about having somebody taking care of the matter. For by definition, we will have somebody taking care of in some way compliance and data privacy and so forth. The issue is, are we having just one person in small companies doing all of that, or is it better to separate it, for example, for the reason that you just explained? So if anybody has any comments or would like to make or share his or her opinion in the company, would be very interesting.
Hi. So I have had compliance roles and managed compliance functions in a number of industries. It's never been, also as a general counsel, it's never been separate anywhere I've been. And this includes very large organizations with over, also with 200,000 employees. So I don't think it's necessary. I think what's very important is that a chief compliance officer or the person who is in charge of compliance is a lawyer. Sometimes that's not as a requirement. I think it's very linked with the legal department, because ultimately if something goes wrong in compliance, there's going to be a legal claim or a lawsuit of some sort. So it's managing that risk, I think, is actually a responsibility of the legal function as a whole. And so I think it works that it's integrated with the legal department. Now, some organizations may be structured differently. They may be so big that they can separate it in terms of work streams and say, okay, the general counsel shouldn't deal with this. But in the end, the general counsel is going to have to deal with the consequences, I think. So that's why I do support what Kathleen said, and it should be.
And I think that's a very interesting comment, because it's a big debate. I think compliance officer should be a lawyer, yes or no, and the answer is very different depending on companies.
It also depends if you say what would be his or her role, and if you look at, and I only mention a few here, in the company I work for the moment, and I used to work for biopharmaceuticals as well, regulatory shouldn't be a legal person. Regulatory should be a scientist. In bio or pharmaceuticals or the seed industry, and our regulatory person is a scientist. We work very closely together because, whatever she does can have some consequences or can have some results that I have to deal with. But it all depends on what you want to put in that basket of the compliance officer. And that basket of the compliance officer is going to look different depending on the size of the company, the industry of what you're doing. But sometimes it doesn't have to be a lawyer who deals with regulatory issues. I do think in a bank it has to be a lawyer who deals with regulatory issues.
So if I may, I agree with that. In our organization, it's an academic person who is in charge of our regulatory matters, because we are regulated in the UK by Ofqual, for instance. So that's education, and it's an academic thing, and then they work with the legal function. There are also some areas of compliance that are very specific. For instance, in financial compliance, I think there's some areas which the finance department might properly be in charge of, and we also have that.
Does anybody else want to add anything? Any comment or even if you disagree? I mean, I think it's a good conversation, a good discussion, and I think when there's a disagreement, it's a very interesting moment to share opinion and discuss. Anything else? No? Kathleen, you...
Okay, yeah. Where was I? Almost done, I think. Yeah, I came to the conclusions. So please go out and ask for help. Ask for help from ICC. Ask for help from your bankers. Go out and try to find it. There's a lot of information you can get. At ICC, and they're really good to help you. They got a lot of. So in a nutshell, we don't have the same resources at small and medium-sized companies as you have in multinationals, but we know, there is some kind of social control in small and medium-sized companies, although not always, because the social control falls apart once you're based in another country. I mean, the people that are based in Russia at our factory don't speak English most of the time, so there is a communication problem. The only two people who speak English in our Russian company is our general manager of Russia and the girl who reports to me. But then again, I mean, her English isn't that good either. So you have to be aware of these limited resources, both in people and in money and in time as well. Because, if you have to deal with a lot of other stuff, you don't have a full-time, you cannot make compliance a full-time job. If you do spread it over the entire company, that means that actually compliance is not something that is pushed from the top down, but is actually lived in the company bottom up. And that is ideal, if everybody understands compliance and why we need to be compliant, why we need to do certain things, it's easy. You have to know your business before you can actually set up a compliance program. You have to know what you need. You have to know that you're not going the right way. You have to know the risk that you have, because there is no need to go for something where there is no risk. And I mean, some compliance programs, some parts of it, you don't need to know your risk. I mean, if you speak about facilitation payments, which are possible under the FCPA, which are completely forbidden under the UK Bribery Act, if you have business in the UK, you need to make sure that you don't do it. There might not be a great risk, but there is a risk. And there is not one size fits all. It doesn't exist for compliance programs. And like I say, get help. It's out there. You don't have to do it on your own, but you have to make sure, and that's very important, you have to make sure that your senior management understands why you need compliance, and what the added value is of compliance. And the added value is not about, avoiding fines or getting prison sentences or whatever. The added value these days is also about making sure that you actually have your customers want it. You need this for your customers. The customers don't want to work anymore with companies, or your partners probably don't want to work anymore with companies that are not compliant. I mean, these days you have to have a story as a company. You cannot just go to the world, and we're not stock listed, we're a family-owned company. Even as a family-owned company, you cannot go to the world and say, the only reason why I'm here is to make money. That doesn't work anymore. You have to have a story about your company. And if you have a really good story about your company, but you're not compliant and you're corrupt and you do things you shouldn't be doing, then that story is worth nothing. So, but you have times are changing, and like when I started with Tyco, times began to change because we had this entire scandal with Tyco, and I just joined Tyco after the scandal, and then I've seen the company world change more and more ever since. And I still worked for, when I worked for a biopharmaceutical company, a startup, we had cowboy salespeople. I have now really nice salespeople. They never do. I mean, they're all so very careful. In my previous job, when I worked for an American company, the salespeople were very careful as well and very nice. But I've worked for companies in the biopharmaceuticals, and they came from device companies. So they started working for the startup company, but the previous company, the salespeople were device companies. I mean, the medical device companies 10 years ago, those were cowboys. I mean, they would do anything to sell their products. And they would actually say afterwards, oops, look what I've done. Solve it. And they pushed it towards me. And then you just have to say, no, I don't solve this problem. You knew this. I mean, we trained you. You were so good, well aware of what you did, that it was wrong, that immediately after you did it, you came to me and said, oops, look what I did, solve it. No. I think you have to be very strict at this point in time, say, okay, you can always make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes, and you know, when you do something and you think afterwards, oh my God, what have I done? Because somebody tells you, you shouldn't have done that. Or you know, you negotiate a contract and one of the clauses is a disaster, and you think, oh my God, how could I have done this? But not like you come in and you say, I did something wrong. I know, don't worry, I sold the product. Go and solve the legal problem around it. Just say no. No. Okay?
So, one comment that I would like to make before arriving to conclusion. I think what she said is really important, especially on the fact that one size doesn't fit all, because I've seen in many cases the exercise of compliance was ticking the box. Okay, do we have this policy? Yes. Do we have that? No. Let's copy what Nokia or the big player, depending in which industry you are, have, and it's going to work. And that's sometimes something that I've seen in different company of different sizes, and it cannot work for a big amount of reasons. And one of the things that in my view is really important is leaving compliance. Whatever program you have, the smallest, the biggest, but leave it with the people, train it, explain it, raise awareness, because a lot of time, especially salespeople or other people that they feel this compliance as something that you have to do, but they don't really care. They don't really understand what's behind that. So really, in my view, the first thing is really raise awareness and make sure that people understand the reason why. It's not a piece of paper just for sake of making us happy lawyers that needs to have something to do. No, it's something that, in my view, should be discussed and understood by all people working in the company, the blue collar doing whatever thing on the floor shop to the top management, but it needs to be something shared and understood. And therefore, I really think the idea of having a strong compliance program, depending on your industry, the size of the company, but it's tailor-made for the company in which you're working, and it's not just a copy and paste of something that was working perfectly in another scenario in another company. In my view, it's really important. Does anybody have any question or comment or disagreement or anything? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to agree and emphasize that it's about changing behavior, and I think that's what's very rewarding, actually, about being a compliance professional. And in my experience, having rolled out compliance programs all over the world, the way to do it also is to use technology. I mean, and that links to Hugh's presentation as well before. So if you, of course, not just PowerPoints and something, I agree with Kathleen as well there, but the things we've done, our organization, we've done videos of the people, the compliance team making a presentation on sanctions and on privacy and things like that, and then making it mandatory for the organization and having everyone at a click of a button be able to take that and access it and kind of make it real. In addition to, in-person training is also very important. But I think that element is very important to be able to really make it understood by everyone. As technology will boost the effort.
There was another question there.
I think there's no doubt that, compliance issues are now more important than ever, simply due to how much it hurts not to be compliant. The exterritorial application of British and American rules contribute to that. I think also the discussion before is a question of, it raises a question of integrity. The compliance program does not only need to be installed and enforced, but also needs to be administered by an organ or an organization which is having sufficient integrity. So that raises the question to me, to which extent do you believe that using external advice, external lawyers in the execution of compliance programs, will that, in your opinion, add to the integrity and the enforceability and the understanding, indeed, of the importance of it?
No. I honestly have to say no. I don't think that external law firms would bring any added value to your compliance program. Unless, of course, you don't have people who understand compliance in the company. Then you need external law firms to do something. But honestly, I think that external law firms don't know the business as in-house counsels do. And you have to know your business and you have to know your people. Otherwise, if you work with external law firms, your compliance program becomes a piece of paper or a binder of a lot of papers that is put in a cupboard and never opened again. That probably looks really, really, really professional, but it's there and it stays there. And I think I honestly think that there is no added value for external law firms to come into the compliance function.
I have a response to that, again, from experience. So I think external law firms can play a very important role in the auditing of the program. So once you've put it together, so I agree, internally, it has to be tailored to your business. And you could even get some assistance from external counsel in that. The experience I had is they provided the learning management system, which we then customized and then implemented. But most of the work was done in-house for that. But then a different law firm came to audit the ABC program that we had rolled out. And that was, maybe it's window dressing. I agree it could be a little bit that. But it was very important for the board of the company to have had that external perspective to kind of say, not only did we do something internally, but an external firm has rigorously gone through and said, yes, this is compliant with the UK Bribery Act and all these requirements. So, it can be.
Yeah, there's a lot of window dressing in compliance, and there is a lot. We're not stock listed, and I used to work for stock listed companies, and we had a lot of window dressing in stock listed companies, because the most important thing is we can actually report on that in our annual report. If you have this external law firm who comes and audit it, you can report on it in your annual reporting, and that is something that looks good for shareholders.
Yeah, but if you have an interaction with that firm, you can maybe improve and enhance your program. They can give you, depending how well they know your business, they could be. But I think it depends on every organization and the size of your company.
And I also think it also depends a lot, because I would say that I'm probably in between. I have a slightly different opinion, because I think that sometimes it's window dressing, I agree with you, but in other occasions, depending on the interaction with, for example, internal counsel, the people, this can be actually a great improvement for the compliance program, or can be just window dressing. So in my view, I've seen both. I would definitely think that some support would be helpful, but if it's done in the right way, at the right time, from the right external company, and with the right internal involvement. Otherwise, it's not really working so much. That's my personal opinion. But I definitely think it can be adding value, depending on how you use it. You wanted to make another comment?
Actually, I have a comment. I've been both in-house and in charge of compliance in EMEA and Asia Pacific for a publicly listed U.S. company, and external advisor to an SME that had far too many compliance policies internally. So I have a sort of unique perspective on this question. When I was in-house, what was really important and what was slightly lacking at the company where I was responsible for giving both the training and getting the buy-in from the teams in EMEA and Asia Pacific for the compliance policies was the full buy-in of the management on our compliance policies, because we had a mixture of a special management team that was made up of a lot of former military, and a lot of whom were not American but Israeli, and some of them just didn't buy it. They didn't really think it was that important, and you really need buy-in from the top. And for me, that's the most important thing to get and to sell internally to get the compliance programs to work. But in terms of making a coherent compliance program that your employers are capable of understanding, I think sometimes just an objective outside perspective is important. And I've actually assisted clients with making sense out of their own internal policies, because often they have internal policies that are excessively numerous and contradictory of each other. And so they need someone to come in and just, try to make sense of them all.
I tend to agree with that, absolutely. The issue that I've seen is that if the person, for example, from an external company or law firm, does make a comment, but there is no interaction with the internal, the comment can be really a piece of paper.
Right. Well,
and
these are clients that I've worked with for many years, so I'm really familiar with their business and how
and that's an important thing in my view. Really, the closer with the business. Otherwise, it can be a very good exercise put on paper. And instead, what we said, I think on this we'll agree. It's not a matter of having a good piece of paper. It's having something that works actually from all the perspectives. So I agree with that. I don't know if you have other comments on this.
No, absolutely. I think you can better have a less good compliance program that actually is lived within the company than a very nice piece of paper that has no value in the company. I think it's strange to say this, but it is, because you can have the most perfect compliance program that you can imagine. When it's just a binder in a cupboard, it doesn't count. And you cannot do compliance if your top management doesn't care. You have to have at least one sponsor within the senior management team and within the board who says, go for it, do it. Explain to me why we need to do this. And those are questions I get as well. Huh? Why do we need to do this? Is there some real value in doing this? And that real value can be, we need to do this because this is legal. But the real value, I usually don't explain by explaining, okay, there is a legislation and we have to follow this. And these are the possible, consequences if we follow this. The value of something, certainly when you speak to members of the board, it's not about this is legal and we have to do this. They know that. I mean, they're not stupid. They wouldn't be in a board if they didn't know that. the value would be, this is something when we get, when we do a partnership with a huge company and they send us like 25 to 50 pages that we had to fill out on, do you use child slavery on your fields? But we get this. I mean, everybody gets this. Huh? Do you use, like anybody would ever say yes? I mean, seriously, that doesn't happen. But you get these 50 pages. And because of the fact that, people know us and you have your reputation and I can fill this in. Actually, my secretary can fill these things in now. Because, it is lived within the company and it's supported by, by our shareholder who is very supportive of it, and it's supported by the senior management team. But you do get these things, and I'm pretty sure that we all get them. And some of the questions are that you think, seriously, would anybody ever say that if they did this? But apparently, yeah.
So, any final comment? You wanted to say something, or was a...
No, I was just in support of
Okay.
what you said, because I think indeed external lawyers will be able to assist you in having a credible compliance exercise in any firm, actually, because exactly the problem is that it will so easily turn into just window dressing, having the program there, and showing that that's done, but the enforcement of it is failing. And then I would add that even the Justice of the Department of Justice will accept mitigation of consequences if there are effective remedies to a failure of credibility to any comprehensive compliance program. So I think it would be worthwhile considering, even in any type of and any size of company. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comment? So I think we finished the session, and I think the 2 days, so I'm very happy to...
First of all, thank
you.
Kathleen, and give her this great present.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all really appreciate that. Thank you.